And hey, look at that. Slightly doesn't align with my ScreenFlow camera, I think, but we have a video feed appearing in our application, which is really cool. Hey everybody, in this video we're going to try a little bit of live coding today. What we're going to do is try to create a video streaming component, and we're going to build that with StencilJS. And so what gave me the idea for this video is recently I published this tutorial that's on the screen now about using the camera API from Capacitor in a PWA, in a desktop-based web application. And so typically with the camera API from Capacitor, you'd be using that, say, on iOS or Android, where it's going to launch that native overlay to take the photo or choose it from the gallery or whatever you want to do. But that implementation isn't available on the web. So what we did was use the PWA Elements package that's provided by Ionic as well. And what that does is it just adds that UI element necessary to create sort of a nice photo taking experience on just a normal desktop browser and a PWA as well. Because we do have the ability to take photos through the camera. We just need to make that experience a bit nicer. But that's not what this video is about. I'll link to this tutorial, or you can see it on screen now if you want to check that out. But in doing that tutorial, I noticed that basically the camera modal that the Ionic PWA Elements is using, it's basically just streaming video from the camera. And then it looks like there's a bit of trickery going on there to then use a canvas, a HTML5 canvas element to take a still from that stream when the photo is taken. Now I thought this functionality was pretty interesting because I don't currently know how to stream video and just have it display in the browser. So I thought that was interesting. I want to look more into that. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of display how I usually go about if I don't know how to implement a particular feature. One of the strategies I use in figuring that out and implementing it. And that is through looking at the source code of some established project on GitHub. And I've talked about this a little bit before in a slightly different context. I have another video which I'd recommend looking at as well, which basically talks through like how to go through a GitHub project that you don't own, just some source code of a project that you don't know or understand, and then how to sort of find things in there if you're trying to debug something, where you should be looking, how to find it, that kind of thing. And so it kind of gives you a bit more power in your debugging and development rather than, say, just relying entirely on Google and things like Stack Overflow. So this video is going to be very similar in spirit. We're going to use this GitHub repository here to see how they are doing it and then try to implement that ourselves to create a video streaming component. So what we're going to do is look through this PWA Elements repository here. We're going to find that camera functionality that we just talked about that allows us to take a picture on the web with that sort of nice UI. And we're just going to focus on the video streaming aspect of that. So our goal here is kind of to extract the video streaming aspect of that component, which has already been built, which we'll be able to see in here. Extract that into our own little component that just focuses on displaying a video stream on the screen. So what we're going to do first, of course, is just come to this GitHub repository here and just take a look around. So we were interested in the camera functionality. And so if we just browse around the project, usually in the source folder, we'll probably find what we're looking for eventually. And if we go into components here, you can see the various components that the PWA Elements library has. And we've got camera and camera modal here. The code we're interested in is in the camera implementation. And we'll open up the TypeScript file because that's where all the logic is going to be. And so if we browse through here, we can see the implementation of the camera for taking photos in this package. So there's quite a lot of code here, and a lot of this is to display the UI and to take a still photo from the video stream. So our code is probably going to be a lot easier because basically, we're kind of working backwards. Whoever built this component, which I think has got Max here and some other contributors as well, they're sort of starting from that video streaming aspect of it and then using that to take a photo. So since we're only interested in the video streaming process, we're kind of starting with this finished product here and then trying to get back to the bare bones basics of it all. So what we're going to do just to start off with is we're interested in stuff related to streaming. So let's just search for stream. And so if we can just browse through every instance of stream in this code here. So the start here, we've got some member variable set up called stream, and that's of the type media stream. And so we could just ignore that for now, or we could find out what that type is exactly. Because if we don't know about streaming, we probably don't know what this type is. So now might be a good time to open up another tab here and just Google JavaScript media stream type. And you can see the first result here is from MDN, which is a fantastic resource for a lot of stuff like this. Has a lot of descriptions of APIs, some pretty good sort of instructions in here. And so we can see what this media stream is now. This is the media stream interface, represents a stream of media content. Stream consists of several tracks such as videos or audio tracks. Each track is specified as an instance of media stream track. You can obtain a media stream object either by using the constructor or by calling mediadevices.getUserMedia. And so this gives us some pretty good context right away for that, what that media stream is. And so maybe if we look in the project, we'll find this getUserMedia. So let's see if that is being used in here. And we can see here, getUserMedia is being called here. And that is being assigned to this stream here. And this is inside of the init camera method, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And then once that code is run, we're calling init stream with that getUserMedia that was just created. And if we look at init stream here, we've got some more code where we've got this video element. We're getting its source object being set to the stream that was passed in. And so we're already it sounds like we're already getting pretty far into this and pretty close to what we want. So we've sort of got access to this stream, we've initialized it and set it on a video element. So that probably implies that we have some video element tag in our template somewhere that's going to need to be set. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. And I said, there was something I just said that I wanted to take a look at. We have that stream being set there inside of the init camera function. We'll see where init camera is being called from. I think that's what I was thinking of. Okay, so we're awaiting this.init camera here, and that looks like it is inside of our component didLoad method. So that's the sort of start of the process there. So we're kicking things off by initializing that camera right when the component loads. So there's probably some extra logic going on here too. We have this await this.query devices to see how many cameras there are. We have some other constraints here in the facing mode. We're only going to focus on the basics here, but there probably is some extra stuff you could do around making this a bit nicer, managing orientation, things like that. But we're just going to focus on just getting that video streaming element happening. And so we are pretty close to that now, it seems. We know that we load our component, we call this.init camera. Inside of this.init camera, so we just search init camera. Inside of init camera, we have that code that makes a call to getUserMedia, which sets up our stream object here. And then that getUserMedia stream is being passed to init stream. And then that init stream is handling setting the video element source object to that stream. And so if we just go down to the template now, we should be able to see a video element in here. So if we just search video, you can see here. So we check if this dot has image capture, so that's available, we render this video. So it's got some style being set, which we can check out in a second. It's being set to video stream style. We have a reference here. And so this, the HTML video element, which this is, that's going to allow us to select this element and presumably set that stream onto this element. And so we have this.video element equal to element. So we're setting up this.video element to equal this element here, as in this video. And it's set to autoplay and plays inline. It has those attributes as well. So let's check this.video element. And Yes, that's the code we looked at before where that's getting set. So we assumed that was being set on our video element there, because just from the way the code is worded, it looks like that's what is happening, but we sort of verified that now. We know that this .video element is a reference to that HTML5 video tag, and that's being set here. And presumably we have a member variable set up here as well to set that variable up. So I think at this point we sort of have enough information to build a basic bare bones implementation of this. So I don't know if it's going to work yet or not, but it seems to make sense. So what we're going to do is create a new Stencil project now and try to implement that code. Okay, so I've just got my terminal up here. We're going to create a new Stencil project with npm init stencil. And of course, this doesn't have to be in Stencil. Just so happens that this particular code is set up in Stencil, so it's going to be a bit easier to follow if we're using Stencil as well, but the same basic concepts are going to apply with using Angular, React, Vue, whatever. Nothing about this is really specific to Stencil. It's just a generic web API that we're using. So we'll create that project. And so if you're familiar with Stencil, if you're not, I'll try to link to some additional resources where you can check out a bit more about that. But we can choose between an ionic, PWA, an app, or a component. A component is probably most kind of appropriate for what we're doing here. The component starter allows you to create a standalone component that you could then install in other applications and use in other Stencil applications or Angular, React, Vue applications, wherever you want, anywhere that web components are supported. So we could use that and create a standalone component. I actually just want to see this thing directly in an ionic PWA, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to call this Stencil video stream. And we're going to make that our working directory. And we'll just serve that with npm start. We'll get that running in the browser. I think that npm packages haven't been installed. So just run npm install first. I think this is actually a bug. The npm init process should install these automatically, but that's okay. We'll just run npm install. And now we'll run npm start again. So that will serve that in the browser. And let's get our debugger and everything set up so we can inspect some things. So inspect that, give it a little refresh. Cool. So we have our ionic PWA set up now. What I'm going to do is just, I'll create a new component and then we'll just add that component to this homepage. So I'll open this up in Visual Studio Code now and then we will get to work. Okay, so I've got that project open now in Visual Studio. I'm just looking at the home page here. What we're going to do is create a new component in the components folder here. And we'll just call this one app video stream. And we'll need to create the TSX and the CSS file for that. So we'll call it new file app video stream.tsx and another one for app video stream CSS. And so what I usually do, just to avoid having to write out all this code, I'll just copy and paste one of my other components. We'll get rid of the template there. And we will actually keep that there so they don't get that complaint about the H there. So we'll just replace this with a div. And we'll change this to app video stream. And here as well. So we're going to need that component did load method to sort of initially set up our stream, because that's what was happening in that GitHub repository. And we're going to need a member variable set up for the video stream. So you can see back in here, we just have this member variable set up here called video element. So we'll set that up as well. I'll say public video element HTML video element. And we need any other of the member variables. Stream, we'll set up the media stream variable as well. And let's say public stream, and that was of the type media stream. Okay, so from here we don't have to set this up exactly the same as the PWA Elements camera functionality has it, but it might be a bit easier to follow along with if we do something similar. So what we had in the component did load, and I've just noticed too in the component did unload, there's a call to this stop stream method, which maybe we'll implement that at the end of this video, depends how long this goes, but that would be a good idea to stop the stream when the component is being destroyed, so that's not lingering in the background. Generally, it's always a good idea to undo everything you're setting up in the unload or destroy hooks of your components. So we're going to await this.camera in here. So let's call that. So we'll say await this.camera, which isn't going to work. This.init camera, sorry. It's not going to work now because that doesn't exist, of course. To use await, we're going to have to mark our component did load as async. If you're not familiar with that, the last video actually that I released was about using async await. So I'll link to that if you're unfamiliar with this process here. So we'll save that. And now let's set up our init camera method, which is presumably going to be async. Because that's going to return a promise that this is awaiting. So let's now take a look at that init camera again. We're not going to use all of this code. There are some constraints here that are being passed in, which are optional. Again, we're not creating a fully fledged component here. We just want to get the video streaming. So let's focus on the basics for now. So we'll set up this same try catch block here to make sure we catch any errors. Jump back into our code. So we're just going to paste that here. And so what we're going to do, if there is some kind of error, we're not going to do anything with that at this stage. We'll just log that out for now so that we can see it. I prefer error. That is just personal preference for me there. So we have this const stream equals await navigator.mediadevices.get user media, video true, audio false, and then the constraints. We should be able to just get rid of constraints there. So that is an optional parameter, or rather property of this object. And then we're going to call the this.init stream method. So let's set up that now. And we'll take a look here. So we have another async function. So we'll say async init stream. And this is having that media stream passed into it. So we'll set that up there. And then the important thing that we mentioned was that we set up this element here, the source object. We set that to stream. And we'll also log out the get video tracks as well, just so we can see some debugging stuff in our console if things aren't working. So inside of here, we'll set our member variable, this.stream, to the stream that's passed in. And then we'll do this part here. The this.video element.source object equals stream, which of course we don't have set up yet. At least we don't have it set up properly. We haven't done the bit in the template yet. And so I think that is all we should need. We're not worrying about image capture here. So I think we can just leave this photo capability stuff out for now. But again, not 100% sure how this is working, so we'll see what happens when we get towards the end. And we have always re-render here. All right, so this is being called on this.element.force update. I'm not sure about this yet, so let's just add that for now. So this the element it's referencing here is the stencil component itself, I assume. We should have an element set up here. So what I'm going to do is comment that out, and then we'll come back to that and see if that's required later. In general, what I try to do if I'm doing something like this, like trying to figure out how something works from some other code base, is to not include any code that I'm not sure of or that I don't know what it does. Otherwise, well, for two reasons mainly, you end up with a bunch of code in your code that you don't actually need, and you also end up with code you don't know how it works, you don't know how your own component works, which is never a good thing. So my advice in general would be to just make sure you're only pulling in the things you need, and if you don't know what they're doing, make sure that you look it up first. So basically what we're going to do here is we're just going to see if it'll work, if things aren't working, then it might imply that this is doing something, and then we'll look into that further. Okay, so now let's set up that video element in our template. So basically, again, there's a whole bunch of extra UI here and some conditions and so on, but hopefully we can just grab this video and have it do something for us. So I'm just going to drop that in here. We don't have any video stream styles. I don't think it's important, but let's just quickly look up what that is referencing. It's just got some facing modes, some transformations here, so I don't think we're going to need that at all. So we will get rid of that. We do need to set up that reference onto our video element so that this member variable here does have a reference to this element so that we can set that source object. We'll keep autoplay and plays in line. So at this point, maybe this will work. So what we're going to do is just try to drop this component into our homepage, and yeah, we'll see if it works. So we'll come back to app home, and we'll just replace what is in here with our element. So that would be app video stream. I'm going to save that and jump back into the browser. So we'll give this a refresh, and we can see here, this is good sign, I think. It says that localhost wants to use your camera, so I'm going to allow that. And hey, look at that. Slightly doesn't align with my ScreenFlow camera, I think, but we have a video feed appearing in our application, which is really cool. I was expecting some errors actually. Usually it doesn't work first try, but yeah, there you go. We have a working video streaming component based on the way that this PWA Elements package sets up that same sort of functionality. We've managed to extract the parts that we need from all of this code. And again, I'll sort of stress not only taking the bits of the code that you need, and obviously, if you're copying code as well, depending on how much you're copying, and you have to consider, the license of the code and who's, if people want you taking their code, but certainly it's generally fine to, use others' code to see how they've done things and implement your own versions. We're not just copying and pasting this whole thing. We're just using this to work out the core functionality behind what this is doing, which is basically just this media stream API that we're using and setting that up on a video element. But yes, you certainly don't want to just come in here and just copy and paste this entire file into your own code here. Not only because you're kind of just stealing the code then, and maybe you're not allowed to do that. I think this is MIT licensed anyway, so that would be allowed in that case. But you want to understand how your code works, because otherwise you're going to run into bugs. If something doesn't work, you have no idea how to fix it. So I think this sort of approach is good to take, this sort of step-by-step, looking things up, figuring out how it works, rather than just copy and pasting. And the code that we ended up with is, actually surprisingly simple. This is a very small amount of code for something that is, streaming video from the inbuilt web camera. So I think that's, it's really cool. So I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please do feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.